Hey everyone, Arshad, Michael here for another podcast, second in the series, chatting with Michael. Hopefully you all enjoyed the first podcast. If you haven't watched it, you can go check it out. Should be on our YouTube page at Frasers GAMSAT. This one's going to be on Michael's YouTube page. What was the name of your
I don't
YouTube
even know.
Doesn't even know.
I think it's 90 plus GAMSAT.
90 plus for the last. All right, that should be up. It should be up there. Hopefully you're all tuning in and you're all watching it. We'll be talking about all things Section 2 today. We'll be a bit more focused, a bit more like I was focused on specific things today, whereas last week it was more of like a broader, the story, so on and so forth. Anyway, before we jump into what we have on our little paper over here, the master plan,
the blueprint.
the master plan, it's art. How's life, dude? How's your weekend?
Good, man. Super busy. I need to remind myself to slow down and
dude, you need to chill. And
like this guy going out to weddings in a Mustang.
Oh yeah, like I was just telling Michael, I had a couple of friends' weddings. We rented out a Mustang 67, and we were just like, just rolling around, good fun.
I need to do that.
If you were in St Kilda and you heard some revving, it was probably me doing a disservice to the good people of St Kilda. But you gotta have fun. Anyway. Let's get into it. I know there's a lot we want to discuss, and obviously we don't want the podcast to go on for too long. If you want to hear the story of my life and my 69 Camaro driving around with the friends doing random crap, you can always follow me on Instagram, but please don't.
Or just listen to Mustang Sally.
Whatever it is. Anyway, so there was quite a few things that you want to discuss and your students wanted to discuss, and we can. And I think one of the things we talked about today is, because Michael and I were talking about quite a few different things, and we're talking about how there is no fixed, correct approach to anything, but there's a set of different approaches that all have their pros and cons, and you need to identify your style of learning and your style of writing, so on and so forth, and then think about which approach is going to best is going to work best for you, right? But anyway, that's something that you guys will see as we go throughout the session. Anyway, let's jump into it, Michael. I think the first thing that we really want to discuss is.
Can I start this one off?
Oh yeah, go for it, dude.
Go for it. Off, yeah.
Yeah, no, go for it.
So I have been dealing with so many inquiries and questions about style and about task A and task B and how they should or should not be responded to differently. And from a lot of people as well that have read or seen my writing, because I do it differently, wondering if there's a way that you need to. And also within that as well, as I've had a few students trying different styles like creative writing, wanting to just go into and explain what some of the benefits and perhaps downfalls of certain ways of approaching it are, and use that as a prism for developing a deeper understanding of what's required.
Before we jump into each of them, what would you list as the major type? So expository is one, then argumentative.
Yeah.
Or would you class those two similar? Would you say?
It's pretty similar, man.
Pretty similar. Sweet.
Your normal standard essay structure, argumentative.
Yeah. Reflective.
Yep.
And then creative/narrative.
Yeah, there's also, my reflectives are kind of discursive as well, but we're kind of just delineating. Broadly, it's expository, argumentative, and discursive, reflective. But there are some people that kind of just go on not go on, but it unfolds deliberately without a structure and kind of ambles and then arrives at a viewpoint rather than the viewpoint being at the start.
Yeah, sweet. All right, let's jump into each of them. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah, cool. So with task A, the first thing to be aware of is that task A generally deals with interpersonal issues. So it might be democracy, government, and these things provoke of your various intellectual faculties, such as your linguistic faculties or critical reasoning, emotional intelligence, creativity. These are all kind of in different parts of the brain, and there's no one intelligence that's better than the other, but my approach is essentially to show off as many of these different intellectual faculties as possible to show that I'm a well-rounded individual. Nevertheless, task A, being that it deals with issues that are interpersonal, outside self, it tends to lend itself well to critical reasoning. And so an argumentative or expository type style. And what we mean by that is that at the outset of the essay, you tend to have, you've got your 5 quotes, and if you've properly understood the nuance of those quotes and the complexity, rather than just pick the one word that's in all 5 quotes and said, the theme is smiling, and then try to make an essay from that. If you really understand and have in your own mind previously various ideas and motives situated in their broader contexts, then your essay becomes a focusing. So your introduction is the acknowledgement of the broader theme, and we're going to deal with this aspect of the theme because we can't deal with all aspects, and then this aspect of that focus, and then your contention is a single strong opinion on one of those focuses. The point of the rest of the essay then becomes, I often say, if you weren't in the GAMSAT, why would someone sit down and write an essay? You would only do that if you had something that you wanted to say about a point, right? Which is the reason for a contention. And the reason for the rest of the essay existing is to prove valid or explore further the contention. So once you have that opinion that is a focus, it's kind of like a spear, your topic sentences become kind of the backbone, a logical backbone that are required to prove your contention. And the rest of the body paragraph simply just to prove the topic sentence correct. And if you've done that properly, then your essay could be reduced to topic sentence, therefore contention. Yeah. So that's task A start. Now you don't need to do it, and a lot of people indeed will do two argumentative, one for A and B.
Yeah, and like I said as well, like we talked about earlier, you can do any style in task A. You can do a reflective. If it's a good reflective, it'll score a good mark. You can do a creative. You can do whatever. But it's not about what's best. It's about what's easiest, right? And for task A, in most cases, an argumentative will be easiest because the style of theme that comes for task A, like Michael mentioned, lends itself best to an argumentative because of that critical reasoning form of writing that comes, right? Again, if you wanna write a reflective piece, it probably might be a bit harder to achieve the things that you're looking for, but you can still do it, right? And the reason why task A lends itself better is because of that connection of critical reasoning. The theme being an interpersonal, societal theme, it's usually something that's like, it involves structures, it involves the way society functions, and it's not something that people usually write people do write stories about it, but it's more like something that's easier to like pick apart and logically dissect in terms of the way these things are interconnected, right? So again, that's like I'd pretty much fall into the same place. I'd say generally that with task A, do whatever you're strongest at, but in most cases it's easier to be stronger at writing an argumentative essay.
I think though that if you've got, there is a subset of students that it's harder to write a task A to a task B response, I think, or to write a sophisticated task A style response. By task A, I mean expository style response to a task B, than it is the other way around. There are some students that are more comfortable with B, but you just need to be cognizant and wary of that. In an ideal response, there will be that linear backbone of critical reasoning that follows directly and expounds on a point.
Exactly.
Narrative is where you're going to have the hardest. With the task.
Agreed.
Task A to a narrative is going to be very hard because a narrative, definitionally within a story, is that you're removed. So the marker is left to imply your reasoning faculties from the story. And that's a big glass ceiling.
The whole point of a narrative, especially if the whole essay is a narrative, is that with narratives, the point that you're making is supposed to be implicit, right? Everybody hates a movie where, the movie is just forcing the message on your face, right? It's like love, love will heal. It's like the message is supposed to be implicit, right? But the whole point of GAMSAT essays, especially task A, is that you want to make your point as explicit as possible. So if you're doing something that's naturally implicit and you're trying to be explicit, it's just going to come off really awkward. I generally don't recommend narratives for task A, but if someone does want to do it, I say don't make the whole essay a narrative. Maybe have a component that's like a story, but then you break off into an analysis or something. Or maybe I had one student, and this dude, he was just the most beautiful writer. I think he scored like an 89 as well, like super crazy mark, like up there. He used to write these crazy awesome essays, and then he used to finish it off with these beautiful poems. I actually don't even know why he was becoming a doctor. I was just like, dude, just become a poet. But anyway, that's the way that I.
But don't do that.
but don't do that. Anyway,
I've got a student at the moment, man. I reckon she could do better than me.
Yeah.
If she knocked it down. My advice to her was though, she did narrate the whole thing, and I would have given it an 89 or closing in on it. It was very good.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I gave her a free tutorial and I said, look, we'll humour it, we'll go through. But it became evident by the end of the session that that style was a limitation that
Yeah.
needed to be overcome and had been overcome well,
Yeah.
but it would have been better still had you,
Yeah.
tried a different tack. And
Exactly. It's like a lot of things to take into consideration is risk mitigation as well. But anyway, task B, probably the opposite, probably like easier to do. Again, you can, whichever style works best for you, do it, and feel free to try out different styles. But I think, and I think Michael would agree, probably reflective, discursive, that kind of style probably works better for task B due to the nature of the theme being that more like intrapersonal.
Yeah, it's like love and freedom.
Happiness.
I do have a point on that, though.
Bros.
Yeah, bros, man.
Whatever it is, right? It's like there's that sense of reflection that you go through, right? Again, if you want to write an argumentative style, I've seen students write very argumentative essays about things like love and the nature of love, and you can still get a great mark. It's more about what's easier to do and how do you do it, right?
Can I chip in further on that, though?
dude,
Because
go for it.
this is where I most deviate from. I invented like a totally new task B style, which I've recently released a blog about, which could do with some further expounding because it was rather complex. But what I've been really addressing all week this week is that it's the thing of diminishing returns. When you narrate, you show a certain intelligence and you get an initial uplift on that, but then it wears off.
Yeah.
It's like you have 1 cake, it's good, 2, it's okay, and 3, like, ugh, right?
Yeah.
Critical reasoning, again, it's like you get your ability to do that, you get some quick marks, but then it wears off.
Yeah.
Reflecting and to be able to show maturity and to be able to look back with objectivity and maturity about mistakes you may have made in the past, and then also to consider other people's views and show that you're sensitive to them as well, you get points there. My task B uses all 3. I start with a short narrative that is figurative, and I get some points for that kind of linguistic sensitivity and also the ability to convey a theme that also gives insight into the theme or the topic of the prompt from my history. My next paragraph is a reflection on that from maturity. And then also the antagonist's view, so I show I can get into someone else's view. And then my third paragraph is, in the first paragraph, and then the next bit is critical reasoning. So I tie it more broadly to society.
So like a final point. Look, I think that's amazing.
Then you kind of get all of them.
Like just a warning for the students at home is like know your own ability limitation as well. Like if you know you're at a 60 level something, don't try that straight away, and it's just super difficult. But I think that's an awesome structure. It shows those different types of intelligences, so on and so forth. Again, you as a student with whoever's private tutoring helping you out, you'd know what your level is. But yeah, it's kind of like those different areas of knowledge, it's showing all of them. The point of diminishing returns is really good as well, right? And that's why
that's the point that's applicable to everyone.
Yeah.
It's just be aware of whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
it stops gaining its points after a while. That doesn't mean there's chop and change, but
Yeah,
that is
don't
a
be just
reason
random.
why doing only one thing. Like, for example, you'll tell people write a reflective essay and they'll write a reflection, but the reflection just continues.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I've heard that about you. You've got those marks.
Exactly.
What else?
Now, what are the consequences of that reflection?
Yeah.
What comes next?
But that's
right?
exactly what I'm
Yeah,
doing, right? What are the
exactly.
consequences for, and what are the consequences for society or history, philosophy?
Progression,
You need
right?
to-
Like a really basic way, like a very, very simplified form of this that we teach some of our students at the weaker level is, just the first paragraph have it like individual, the second paragraph have it societal, right? Which you go through that reflection, how does it affect me as an individual? Then you have that argumentative, what effect does that have on society? But yeah, I think that's an awesome point as well. Again, like really harping on that point that there is no completely correct answer. It's more about where you are at your level and then taking and adjusting it to score the maximum mark that you can for your potential, and then constantly increasing it as well.
The context for that, though, there's a why underneath that is important to get, which is what is ASA asking?
Yeah.
Or why do they choose an essay? It's an opportunity for them to investigate, or an opportunity for you to show how you think. They're not testing your writing, they're testing you. And by you, I mean not just your reasoning, but your emotional intelligence. And all these faculties are not just for the sake of getting points. If you embody all of these, you have a rounded way of interacting and engaging with the world, which are qualities that bode well for a doctor. So it's not just understand it from a heuristic point of view. I do this because it'll get marks.
Yeah.
Just consider that the essay is not a test of, or section 2 is not a test of essay writing. It's a test of how you're thinking, and so you want to ensure that you convey yourself. And that's why when you get people that narrate, or oftentimes, at the simpler level, you'll get students that are like, technology is an issue of great importance.
Yeah.
Something is, a click away. It's accessible to us all, and they're all true things. But it's akin to walking up to the Mona Lisa and saying, there's a rectangle, there's green paint, and there's red paint, versus, not to be critical of, but it's, once you're aware of that doesn't tell me anything about you, and the reason it doesn't score well is purely because I'm trying to learn about you, you can go, even something as simple as, she looks lonely, at least tells me that there's an element of emotional intelligence about you. So when you stop observing things that are already in society, which just become an accumulation of obvious statements, you can start to show you more in the writing, which again is that's the glass ceiling on the narration, is that there's that implication, and I'm trying to learn about you, but you're telling me about Fred and Bob who did this thing.
Yeah, sweet.
Anyway,
all right,
so
let's move on because we don't want to go for too long. Vivian, thanks, Viv.
Take on for the time.
Sweet. All right, essay plan. So I think the next thing we want to talk about is just like a couple of minutes. You want to do the essay plan live, or do you want to?
Go on.
Yeah, sweet. So maybe just for fun, we'll each do quick 2-3 minute essay plan live. My process is very simplistic. I'm sure Michael's is a lot more in depth, but we'll have a bit of fun with it. If it comes out kind of terrible, don't be too roasty at home.
I haven't written an essay.
It's all good. So Michael,
on my list of
you'll throw me a random theme. I'll throw you a random theme. Do you want to go first? I'll chuck one
just
at you.
like a quote.
I'll maybe just a quote, like something like that.
Okay, I'm just gonna. The last quote that I gave to someone was from Emerson. I think it was Emerson. Jeez, I hope so.
I don't even know. I'm gonna think of a quote. Actually, I gotta.
You gotta go.
It's like actually one of my favorite quotes.
I better smash this. All right, cool. Emerson. Every man I meet, every person I meet is superior to me in some way, and in that he is my teacher. They are my teacher.
Yeah, nice. That's a cool quote, right? So every person I meet is superior to me, kind of like, showing that humility, showing that want to learn, showing like, that the person is superior to him, that there is something to gain from everybody, right? So I'd probably start off with that quote. My process is generally a very simple one. I try to ask myself a set of questions that can take me in the direction that I want to go in with the essay, right? So the first question I'll probably ask myself is, what is the meaning of this quote? What am I absorbing it? How can I, almost kind of like rephrasing the quote in my mind to make it my own, right? So like once I do that, once I go down the path of, okay, there's an element of humility, there's an element of learning, there's an element of like thinking about the way people in society each have different sets of knowledge, and you can access and learn from everybody's experiences. That's kind of like, okay, the starting point, right? Then I start to think about, okay, in what way have I experienced that phenomenon in my own life, right? But in both my own life and in the way I've seen it in other people's lives as well, right? Like sometimes you might come across themes that you might not have, but just because you're a 19-year-old kid, you've never experienced bureaucracy or even thought about it in your life. But you've seen other people experience it, right? You've seen your dad come home and be like, talk about, I don't know, red tape and some bullshit like that, right? So there will be some way that you've experienced the phenomenon at some point in your life, even if it was not directly you, right? So over here at this point, I'd probably start to think about how maybe there was a certain phase in my life, probably when I was around 14, 15, where I still consider myself a religious person, but where I kind of became like hyper-religious. And like, I kind of
anti-rebelled.
Yeah. I was like, I'm
gonna go to church.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna be at church. I'm gonna be at the
mosque.
No,
Mom, I'm going to church.
I'm going to the mosque. Yeah, and like during that phase, I kind of saw like everyone who was not religious is kind of lesser than me, right? It's like, you don't have the God-given truth that I have, so screw you, right? Like, and obviously, like, I still am religious, but I've kind of like matured in that way, right? So I can probably now, when I'm thinking about this essay, I can see that as maybe that's like the part of it that I'm going to talk about. How, you know, even though I felt I knew something, I thought of it. I kind of like put myself in this box where everybody else's thoughts was just inferior, rather than thinking about learning from other people, so on and so forth, right? And then I'd probably start to take it down the direction of, okay, now I have this reflective element of something that I've been through in my life. What are the consequences that had on me as an individual, right? How did it stunt the way that I became, I grew up, I evolved as a person? And then how did I solve that, right? I solved it by, you know, starting to like maybe, like, you know, going through certain things that I, like failing in certain things and realizing that my arrogance was what led me to fail, right? And then maybe starting to talk about the consequences of people putting themselves in, you know, these boxes where they think they're right. And maybe I'd even, I don't know, maybe this is a bit far-fetched, but maybe for the second paragraph where I'd start to talk about society, I'd talk about how these days people's opinions have started to become their identity, right? Where it's, and then maybe I'd start to talk about like bipartisanship in America, where being a Democrat is no longer believing a set of things, but like now it's no longer like I believe these political opinions, therefore I'm a Democrat. It's more like I'm a Democrat, therefore I have to have all of these opinions, right? So it's just like your identity is your party.
It's a prescription instead of a description.
Exactly, right? Whereas the way politics should work is because it is that people believe certain, like, you know, I believe X, Y, Z, and there's a party that does most of those things, so I'm going to vote for them. Right?
That's what democracy is.
That's
it's intended to represent the interests of each individual.
Exactly, right.
So it has to go that way.
But now it's because people have put themselves in this box, and they don't want to believe what other people, you know, they're too hubristic, arrogant to learn from other people. This phenomenon happens, right? So anyway, that's just a random rough direction that I'd go, following Michael's kind of style. Generally, in all honesty, my style usually wouldn't start with the reflective. I might go straight into the analysis, but you know, just wanted to have fun with it. You know, start off with that story, go more through the reflection,
say that as well, though?
and then get to the argument.
A good way that I found with Task B is starting with something that's self-effacing, makes you relatable to the reader, and it puts their guard down. Because most people don't talk about the things they've done wrong. They're like, I'm so amazing. But when you start with something like, I really mucked up, this is what happened. They're like, and they're engaged. So it works as a hook, but also it makes them like you. And then also it gives you an opportunity to reflect, which you just did very well then, from maturity, which shows that kind of psychometric awareness of objectivity.
Yeah, starting an essay with the first sentence being something like, I used to hate all non-religious people.
No,
that
seriously.
Would be like, holy shit.
Dead set, man. That's
what's happening?
I once told my pregnant wife, I wish I wasn't pregnant. Ugh, I'm cringing knowing that you read that. And obviously massive, like, and then the whole essay was about how I've learned since then, and like, it was like a,
sweet.
But
anyway,
like that.
There you go. Well, how would you rate that?
Good terrible thing to put on a podcast.
How would you rate the plan that I just shot through?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Strong
you covered
3 out of 10.
Yeah, solid 4. I think the bit that would score the highest, in my opinion, was the part where, like, I think had you have started with a hook like the religious thing, just for the sake of engaging interest, and then the bit you did the reflection there about what you've learnt, then followed by the which is essentially the Task B structure I said earlier, then followed by the link to contemporary society, especially the bipartisanship and you know, the increasingly divisive political atmosphere in America. It's showing that you're able to interact with the world on a variety of levels. You know, you're able to be objective about self. You've got altitude. And you've also got the sensitivity to others who are not like you, and you can see things from the antagonist point of view. You can see, you know, themes and motifs in political ideologies, that they're all high-scoring things, and they're all present. So I think that
I kind of have this urge to write this essay now.
Yeah,
maybe I'll write it.
This is what we do in our spare time. We're gonna when this is over.
Sweet. All right, Michael, do you wanna go for it? Smash it out. I have to give you a quote.
Your favourite quote.
So this is a bit of a random one. You might have heard it before, right? So it's originally a quote from the religious books of Hindu people, but it was.
The Bhagavad Gita? What do we got, the Vedas?
Yeah, exactly, the Vedas.
I probably already know.
It was quoted by Oppenheimer when he first launched the nuclear weapons, and he basically said, I don't know if I'm getting it correct, but he basically said like he launched the nuclear weapons and he was like one of the major people that created them, just for the context, and he said something like, "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." Right? So this is a really out of the random quote, but do you feel like that gives you enough? I'm pretty sure that won't be a GAMSAT quote. It's a bit too random, but it was the only one that came to mind. Have fun with it. Oh, he's going into monk mode.
Death is an intrinsic part of life on Earth. The way that humans interact and confront with death is as if there is a finality in results, that death is oblivion. But death, if you look, is encoded into the way that the world operates. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. I die at night, I wake in the morning. I'm born in the morning. The antelope doesn't resist death from the tiger. The apple doesn't resist dying and then dropping the seeds encased in nutrients into the earth to make new life. That which is dead is that which does not change. Mold. That which is in a constant process of change, death, rebirth, that is what is truly alive. Right? So when I hear death, at the surface level, people are going to say, "Oh, now I'm death," and they'll only hear death in that. But when you see death as the essential nature of life, and you don't relate to it as a finality, but as a beginning. Because when you look retrospectively at each destructive moment in your life, you can bear witness to something that at the time seemed like great death and chaos, but in retrospect makes perfect sense. You can see why that had to happen for the next thing to come. And that too will fall away and the next thing will come. And then you learn that there are green pastures on the other side of what you once feared. So I think when he says death, yes, he has become death, the bringer of the atomic bomb. But in another way, there's the death of the world that was before. The death of a world that wasn't equipped to create this level of destruction. And the birth of a world, not only where it is able, but or where it is possible to be so destructive to other people, but where the implications of that destruction are something that we need to bear on our shoulders every day. And we are today in the midst of what Paul Virilio, French cultural theorist, called a dromosphere, which is from the Greek dromos, or racetrack. And what he's referring to is a sphere inside which everything is quickening. We can sense this quickening. You know, the rate of technology change.
It's exponential.
Like, you think that the iPhone wasn't around, 2009 or something like that, right? And it's just like, everything's just getting quicker. And in part, that's due to the technological innovation that is incumbent on us, of which this is a small step. So, from the Bhagavad Gita, there is that they posit that humanity moves through ages. And in a cyclical way, and the final age where the greed of humankind is emphasised and our most destructive qualities are alive, and we are overcome by them, is called Kali Yuga. And in a way, this is that Oppenheimer is heralding Kali Yuga, and that too is not to be resisted, because like we said, there's that great change. It only seems destructive when you're standing close, but when you step back, you see that humans need to go now through this destructive cycle, emblemized, for example, by the atomic bomb and the destruction that we're imposing on each other, in order to glean from that, to distill and then let congeal and sediment the lessons about humanity that will allow us to go into the next step. Which is the beauty, for example, I say that word very cautiously, but when you look at things like the Holocaust, obviously terribly destructive, but out of it you have things like Martin Heidegger and existential ideas, or the re-emergence of the infinite preciousness of personhood. And so where once people were viewed as numbers in a gulag, reduced to chemical flesh bags, to a physiological set of reactions, we then now see things like gay marriage and the suffragettes, women voting and Black Lives Matter. There's been a re-emergence of a sensitivity because of the image of the naked Jew to the infinite preciousness of personhood. And so you can see in retrospect that death, or Hitler, the destroyer of worlds, was in a way the creator of another world. It's a necessary step in the unfoldment of humanity.
There you go.
That wasn't an essay plan, but there are a bunch of ideas that I just had that I would write
very
about.
Poetic. I like that.
I'm glad that was precious.
Vivian,
pressure
thoughts?
was on.
Did you like that?
Got thumbs up.
Got thumbs up from Vivian. Okay, let's do one more thing, and then we'll call it quits, and we can
go see her friends.
and we can put the rest in the in the next one. So
how to come up with,
Yes.
where do you get ideas like that?
yes, so where do
Probably gonna be the
you
question
get ideas
people
like
have.
that? Just lock yourself in a room for 48 days and think really hard. No.
10 years in my case.
10 years. No. So I think there's a lot of different ways. The direction that I put students in is I think the best place to go is podcasts and opinion pieces and articles. I'm not a fan of reading books for the GAMSAT. It takes there's
Diminishing returns.
It's diminishing returns, right? You're going to read it.
Can we recommend some?
Yeah.
Not the books, the
Oh yeah,
podcasts?
the podcasts.
The
I really
Minefield
like
on the ABC app
Yeah.
is just literally fire.
Minefield.
Listen
I
to that.
like
If you can do that
yeah.
in your section 2, like bang, you're sorted.
I like Philosophize This. That one's kind of
I've heard
nice
that.
as well. There's another one. I can't remember. History something. I can't even remember. Freakonomics is kind of cool. That one's a little bit more like, it's not like philosophical ideas. It's very practical. I like that as well. Very making a lot of stuff tangible. Good examples as well.
Have you listened to the Minefield?
No, I haven't. I
I
should
can't talk to
check
the
it out.
others, but like literally,
Yeah.
there could not be a more perfect podcast for section 2.
Okay,
like
sweet.
I literally, people sometimes wonder where I get things from. Like I'll say something or they'll read something and I say like, where'd you get that from? Like I literally stole it from a podcast.
Yeah,
Like,
sweet.
I listened to the podcast, I wrote it down, and then in my next essay I was like, I've got to use this thing. And then I use this thing, and because I did that enough times, it just got in there somehow.
Yeah.
And my essay's just become an accumulation of things that I read
Yeah.
and wrote down one time.
Yeah, nice.
It's barely even me. Honestly, my section 2, there was nothing there that, like my actual sitting, nothing I had written
This
before.
is a good point that we'll come to later. It's like you're saying it's not yourself, but I'd argue
Well,
the
yeah, so
opposite.
as I'm saying that, I'm
say-
thinking, you need
I'd
to
say
not-
that it is yourself because you've
How
you were
I
able to
cohered them.
synthesize. Yeah,
How-
anyway, we'll get to
Yeah.
that, right? So, yeah, I'd say podcasts and opinion pieces, short articles are the best way to go. Anything more than 5 pages is honestly brutal. You should be reading those shorter 2-3 page articles, opinion
The
pieces.
Guardian.
The Guardian, The Atlantic.
The New York Times.
The New York
Quadrant
Times,
is
the Quadrant.
disgusting in terms of right wing. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's very, but it's good to hear if you aren't right wing the other side, so
Yeah.
you can interact with it more objectively in the
Yeah.
thing. But they write so beautifully.
Yeah, we have a tutor, Andy. He's so good. He did his PhD in cultural studies, but he knows heaps of them. I'll try to get a list of all the. He has like 10-15 different opinion piece sources. That
Oh,
he,
I wrote I have a blog on my website, 90plusgamsat.com, and you can go /blog. In the use of evidence blog, I've taken care at the bottom to link to 7 or 8 articles that I was drawing heavily from in the lead up to my GAMSAT, if you're interested.
Nice. Yeah.
They're a good place to start.
Yeah. So, opinion pieces podcasts I think are really good. Maybe 1 or 2 journal articles of really high value stuff and 1 or 2 books, but definitely don't be like, I'm going to read 5 books and be amazing at the GAMSAT. Yeah. It should be shorter nuggets of information that you're extracting. So now it comes to the next bit, right? It doesn't matter how much you read, it's your process of extracting information. So the way that I talk to my students, I say the most important thing is whenever you read something, extract the information, think about the surface information as well as the underlying implicit points about society as a whole and about individuals as a whole, and then take that information and actually ask yourself, compared to everything I already know about this phenomenon that I'm reading about, do I agree with everything that's being said over here, right? So basically you're taking what you've read, you're comparing it with what you already know, and then you're contrasting it to come to a synthesis of a completely new point, right? And that completely new point is wholly yours, right? Because what you've done is you've taken a random person on the internet, his piece of information, you've taken some random crap that you already know, and you've compared the two to come to an opinion that is yours, right? And when an opinion is yours, that's when you have creative control and liberty over that opinion. What do students struggle the most with? They struggle the most with connecting things that they've read to the themes and stuff that they get, right? And that's because they don't truly own what they've read about, right? So as a result, they've just memorized some stuff, so they don't know how to manipulate it in the way that it should be manipulated. So that's why whenever you read something, you need to go through that process of coming to a synthesis, and the synthesis might not be exactly what's said in the article. It might even be the exact opposite, or it might be the exact same, or it might be somewhere in between, right? But whatever that synthesis is, that's your opinion,
Can I
right?
chip in on that?
Yeah, dude, go for it.
There are the way I had thought of that before hearing you say it is there are 3 processes of metabolization. You've got ingestion, which is just reflected in the mind, the body's reflection of the mind. So your ingestion of information, so reading your article. Digestion or metabolization, which is what you're calling synthesis or integration into your current understanding in novel and new ways. So when you say what you take it, you might replicate it exactly. You might have the opposite opinion currently, but when you add that to it, this new bit, it somehow mediates what you currently know into this cohesive framework that is your net understanding of the world. Yeah, the rest of that point was, so you've got your ingestion of material, digestion and metabolization, so integration to what you currently know. And the last stage of in the digestion is elimination, or in this case, communication. So there's no new knowledge, there's only new understanding. So you can take from wherever you like from these articles or podcasts, but it's the understanding process, which is what you're calling synthesis. That's where it becomes novel, that's where it becomes yours. And the communication of it from that perspective, once that process is done, that's what's being examined.
And that's where you gain creative control over it as well, right? That's where you gain creative control over the idea to manipulate it in the way that you want to. Sweet. Anyway, I think we covered heaps, dude. That was an awesome one. We'll get into another one later on. Thanks everyone at home for dialing in. Hopefully the initial bit, I think the main things we went over today was the style of the essay, the different pros and cons of different styles, essay planning as a whole, different ways of essay planning. We just showed you a couple of different ways. How do you learn and read information, some good resources, but more importantly than the resources, honestly, the resources is the second most important thing. The process is the more important thing, right? You can have the best resources. If you have a trash process, you won't do well. If you have a great process and if you have like very mediocre resources, you can absolutely smash it out. Another resource that you should add to the list, I'm a huge fan. There's a YouTube page called Wisecrack. I don't know if you've heard it, but basically they do analysis of popular culture, movies, TV shows, just random crap. They have this video called The Philosophy of Kanye West, and it's literally just an analysis of Kanye West as a human being.
That's fun to know.
Dude, they have some great ones. They have The Philosophy of Kanye West, The Philosophy of Bill Murray, random things. They released a video, I think just a week ago. Have you ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender?
No.
It's a cartoon back from, I don't know, maybe when I was a kid. They did an analysis of that, and it's basically about the phenomenon of war and how that affects people and their lives. It was a great video. I love that TV show. But I'm a huge fan of Wisecrack. Again, the information is only going to be useful if you go through that process of extraction. That's the most important thing. Anyway, thanks everyone at home.
Thank you.
Michael,
thanks, guys.
good. The other most important thing from this podcast is, take a break, have a good time, go for a friend's wedding sometime. Maybe rent
Hire a Mustang.
Hire a Mustang or a Camaro. Have fun, Don't burn out, right? It's all about the process, believing the process, trusting the process, working hard and getting there. But it's also about well-being, mental stability, so on and so forth. You guys will be good, smashing it out. And, just how long left to the GAMSAT? 2 months?
Just under.
2 months. Sweet. Good luck, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Michael, for coming in.
Thanks, man.
Too easy.